Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Office Hours. Happy to be here today. I see my connection might be a little unstable, so I just want to check and make sure that I'm coming through. So can you just let me know what you all are seeing on your end? Because I'm not really sure the video is coming through as intended. I see a few of you there. Michael, hello to you. John, Peter, Sahil. Good to see everybody. And yeah, I don't know what is going on with this. Yeah, I can see right now it's pretty kind of pixelated. I'm not really sure what the story is. Yeah. All right. I thanks for the confirmation, everybody. You know, you can see me. Is it pixelated though? It looks a little bit on my end, just looking at it. I can't. Yeah, it's a platform issue. I'm gonna have stuff to figure it out for next edition. But yeah, no, that's not it, Miles. It's usually clear. All right. It is what it is. We're just going to kind of roll with the pixelated me today. And yeah, it's, I guess, more important, the content of what we're sharing than how it looks, right? Even though this is a video live stream, but here we are. All right. So yeah, today's episode is on the varieties of tilt that are out there. I think there's a bit of misconceptions about what tilt is and what it's not, especially within the poker world. Within the trading world, tilt is kind of a newer term. I'm not saying that I brought it there, but I am saying that, in talking about tilt within the mental game of trading, maybe brought it to more light. So we're going to get into some of the discussions about what tilt is, what it's not, the different varieties that there are, and we're also going to be answering your questions live, as always. In addition to the questions that were submitted in advance, some of which are related to tilt. But now that I'm going to do a normal intro here, let's just say hello to everybody that's here. So Constantine, welcome. Jonathan, welcome. Peter, Sahil, good to see everybody. And yeah, I can see a bunch of others that are commenting about the clarity of the video. So appreciate everybody being here today. And yeah, excited to talk about this topic. It kind of came to light in my mind to do an office hours on tilt because I've mentioned a few episodes ago that I had begun kind of chopping up some of the content from previous office hours to turn into standalone short videos that you can find on my YouTube channel. And just noticed that in going through all the different office hours, this is a big topic, tilt, massive topic. And yet I hadn't done an office hours on it. And there actually weren't even many questions or topics even related to it. So it was kind of shocking, truthfully, given how big of a problem it is, especially in the poker world. Trading too. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to get angry in trading too. So yeah, let's just kind of jump into it. So for those of you who haven't read my blog from this month, check it out because it's not entirely what we're going to talk about today, but it does give a few examples of facts that I think a lot of people don't recognize when it comes to tilt. And you can see a few of them. So here we are. So many ways to tilt, right? And in the mental game of poker, I identified these 7 types of tilt. And I will say that I've challenged people to come up with a new type of tilt that does not fit under these umbrellas. And I've yet to find one that I think is truly unique. Okay. So you've got run bag tilt, which is effectively the tilt that happens while you're running bad, but it's not that it's a unique form of tilt, so to speak, but it's that there's such a high concentration of tilt inducing stuff that it gets easier and easier for you to tilt as the bad run goes on. And traders experience the same thing in a drawdown. this is just another way of describing accumulated tilt, which is why in the mental game of trading, I did not define or distinguish run bad tilt as a separate form of tilt. Hate losing tilt could basically be renamed as competitive tilt, right? This is just people who genuinely just hate losing, which is by and large not a problem, right? Nobody should love to lose. But the problem is that the way that you react to losing actually causes you to lose more, which goes against the very nature of what you initially hate, right? You can't hate it that much and then also be the cause of additional losses. Injustice tilt, right? This is the tilt that's related to feeling like what's happening is unfair or unjust. And there's a sense of justice and fairness in the world that people in trading and poker and really elsewhere believe. I mean, it's wild. My daughter's almost 9 years old now, and from a very young age had a very strong sense of justice and fairness. I've seen research with infants where they were viewing teddy bears, kind of like one would attack the other, and the infants would have a natural gravitation towards. Sorry, it wasn't attacking. It was like the teddy bears were kind of acting something out, and were treating one teddy bear unfairly, and so the infants would have a natural gravitation towards the teddy bear that was being treated unfairly, as if it was to recognize that what was going on was a sense of justice. So yeah, there is a kind of I think an inherent biological wiring that we have towards this, which is why some of the laws that get created in the world. But anyway, right, in poker and trading, there is no justice. That's the whole point. It's a true meritocracy, and there's also this thing called variance, which affects the short term. So you're raging against what you feel is right or wrong. It doesn't really matter because it is what it is. Mistake tilt, right? This is your reaction to your own mistakes. Then, of course, causes more mistakes, which makes mistake tilt one that lends itself very well to accumulated emotion. Revenge tilt, seemingly obvious. Now, when trading, revenge tilt can be revenge against yourself, the market. Sometimes, some traders will kind of rage against the market makers and the big institutions that are moving the market. And then in poker, right, the revenge can be towards the villains. It can be towards just the game or the injustice entirely. Entitlement tilt. So the reason I put this at the bottom here is because both entitlement tilt and desperation tilt are now kind of diverging our way into confidence. And revenge tends to have a little bit of an element of confidence as well. But entitlement tilt, right, this belief that you deserve to win, you deserve to make money because of whatever you're going to convince yourself, right? I deserve to make more money or deserve to win because of my past track record, because I put in so much work, because I'm better than you. You can convince yourself of lots of things, and which is why it is related to confidence. And desperation tilt, actually in the mental game of trading, is in the confidence chapter, because I have not come across a single client who I would kind of define as having desperation tilt without having a deep weakness in their confidence. So desperation tilt is basically you're so fixated, focused, and driven towards making back the money that you've lost. It doesn't matter how. It usually will kind of be like the rock bottom, and I think is the kind of the line between having a performance issue and truly having a gambling problem, because your actions can become really, really crazy, right? I mean, crazy desperate to make money, and it can cause a lot of problems. I mean, I've seen clients who have busted bankrolls, busted accounts. I mean, this can inflict serious harm on your well-being, your ability to play poker or to trade, and thus your livelihood or your prospects. So yeah, desperation is a really serious problem. In both books, I describe a very detailed strategy that you have to follow to a T if you've got this as a problem. All right, I see a couple suggestions for other forms of tilt. I'm not tilting, aka denial tilt. Yeah, we would just call that denial. I mean, part of the reason, part of the reason I don't like some of the term, I realize this is a bit of a joke here. Some of the reason I don't like the other types of tilt that are out there, especially in the poker world, right? And actually one is listed down here, the winner's tilt. This is the one that tilts me the most. Now, if we're going, so in psychology, and this is, I come from the therapy world. I was trained, right? Master's degree, 2 years doing that, 2 years getting licensed. So I come from the world where diagnoses are important for prescribing treatment, right? And so anytime you're going to label something in a performance environment like this, those labels and terms have to be helpful for understanding what the problem is so that you can then work towards a strategy and a solution. And winner's tilt, I think, is just a really bad and distracting term, right? So for me, tilt is anger. Nobody's angry when they're winning. What you are is either overconfident or you're fearful, in which case you're playing badly or making trades that are poor because of that emotion, right? Either the fear or the overconfidence, not the anger. And so, yeah, I just don't think that is helpful in being able to like work towards a solution to it. You have to figure out which one of those two you're struggling with, right? I mean, we could kind of throw greed in that category, but for those that know my work well, right, greed is, under the other emotional umbrellas. It's not inherently a problem. What about apathy tilt? I mean, so apathy, what is apathy, right? It's like kind of a lack of caring. Why would you not care? It could be a motivational problem, could be a confidence problem. It's not anger. I mean, you could be so angry that you become apathetic, but then why are you angry, right? Are you angry because you hate the losing and then you could become kind of apathetic? That can happen. So again, the terms have to be useful. Otherwise, we're kind of going around in circles. When desperation or revenge kicks in, we need to have some sort of bigger picture reminder to look towards to help us from losing more. So yes, but I don't know that that's the only thing here, right? I mean, with a lot of these issues, with a lot of issues in general, and with a lot of these causes of or types of tilt, you have to better understand the causality. So what is it about, like, what's sparking that revenge, right? The revenge could be a feeling like you're not getting what you deserve. So there's a little bit of maybe injustice in there. You see other players winning more or other traders making more. And so you feel this sense like you have to get yours. And it's this, maybe the flaw could be feeling like you can control your results. You can actually make something happen. And in many situations, that is true. But in trading and in poker, because of the variance involved, that's not true. And especially the way that you end up going about it, you think you can kind of do anything, right? In order to make that money. And it doesn't really work that way. So yeah, I'm not saying having a bigger picture perspective doesn't help. It certainly can. Having a longer term perspective, being able to kind of understand the time frame with which you're going to get what you deserve, certainly can help. But I think in the short term, we have to also look at the deeper flaws that are kind of driving that. Christine, what about desperation to be successful trading and start making money? So the desperation in this scenario where you're basically taking random trades, you're sizing up, scaling up way too large, you're re-entering trades frequently, right? That would be some of the characterizations of desperation tilt. Well, if you were successful in making money that way, well, then you're not really going to become a successful trader, because the way you got there was kind of faked, right? You cheated your way into having some money. And I'm not being exaggerating a little bit with the language there, but bottom line is, like, you didn't build a base of competence that's you're going to be able to leverage to be successful long term. So yeah, you made some money, but you did it randomly and in ways that's not really sustainable. So what do you really have? You got nothing. Point is that the desperation to be successful is coming from something, right? It can be coming from a sense of lacking, a sense of not being good enough, and you want desperately to prove that you are. It could be a desperation to get out of your current situation, which may not be great. But what's happening is you're taking actions that are going to leave you less likely to be successful in the long term. So we really have to understand the nature of the desperation, because it's driving you towards actions that, yeah, like I said, are not going to be helpful long term. So FO's asking how you snap out of tilt in the moment when not following risk plan oversizing trading. Like you got to do the work to better understand what's even causing it. I mean, to think that you can just kind of snap out of it like it's like a fever that needs to be broken, right? Putting an ice pack and taking some medicine to get your fever to break, right? But the anger in the moment is likely driven by such velocity that you're not even kind of seeing the early warning signs, which is where you need to take action early. It could be a lot of accumulated emotion, right, that's driving that, which means that you got to do more work to better understand, where that accumulation is coming from, what flaws are residing within. This is not a kind of a simple fix here, right? The mental game, right, that term is a term that I like because it implies a strategy, an ongoing strategy that's going to evolve and change as you go along. Mindset suggests that you can just like kind of adopt this mindset that is the right way of seeing something, or you just need to change your mindset out of what's going on with tilt. And to me, that implies a level of ease with which you can kind of adjust your emotional state, and sometimes that can happen, but I don't know, it feels like the equivalent of, like sometimes if there's a person pinned under a car, I can lift it up and free them. But yet then if you were to actually do that, right, those sort of Herculean crazy stories that we hear from time to time where people are able to do superhuman types of things, what does that person look like for the weeks and months after? I mean, some people like they've ripped biceps and tendons and they're a mess for a long time. Like it's not sustainable. So yeah, the mental game kind of makes it feel like it's easy to adopt this stuff when it's not. I mean, you can't get bigger muscles from reading a book on fitness. So, why would you think that you could do the same thing here? So the snap out of it, right? That kind of language I think is dangerous. All right. A lot of questions coming in. So this is good stuff. I'm going to keep going here because we're talking about tilt and I see a lot of them are related to that. And then I'm going to get to the questions that came in advance. J-Man, appreciate it. Does entitlement tilt go against the why not me self-motivating thoughts, as in if others have done it, so can I? How do these two things relate? So the if others can have done it, so can I should be like a motivational thought. Okay. The entitlement tilt would be if others have done it, so can I, and I expect myself to, and maybe I expect myself to right now. And by having that kind of a perspective, I'm going to stop this here. Having that kind of perspective, you're just driven to do things that are suboptimal in the long term, right? So you're not actually giving yourself a viable opportunity to do it, learn from their experience. You are expecting it to happen now. So yeah, there's a difference between motivation and anger. And if that is not in the realm of motivation, then you got to get to the source of what's driving the anger. Is why not me dangerous? No, not necessarily. I think there's a lot of things that can be motivating and practical, but you have to define for yourself where that line is. It's not something I can define for you. Is sitting in tilt and learning to work out of it a better long-term strategy than stepping away and letting it dissipate. So it's a question of kind of timing. So is sitting in tilt while you're trading or playing poker or competing a good thing to do? If you have the option to quit, I would suggest that in the short term, you take a break and write down what's going on for you to better understand what it is. So sitting in it, staying in it is always the best way of handling it. The question is whether or not you're going to do that while competing, trading, playing poker, etc. Because more losses are likely to come if you don't understand what's happening. Why? and what to fix or how to fix it, right? If you don't have a strategy, then you're at risk of losing more, which is not what we want. We want to kind of find a way for you to take advantage of what you're learning, right? The sitting in it, as you say, take advantage of what you're learning about it, use that information to better understand the causality, devise a correction, and then deploy it. So stepping away and letting it dissipate, I think, is the worst option, because all you're doing is letting the emotion go when the emotion carries with it a lot of knowledge and understanding. We need to use that to develop that strategy. If you just like let it dissipate, you forget all of it, then then that experience has kind of gotten wasted a little bit. So it really is kind of about timing. Nico, tilt for me is the secondary emotion, possibly preceded by greed. At last, blown account was smaller than usual. Tilt showed up as not wanting to give back money and not wanting to go red in the day. I'm reading the case studies from the book and they're really resonating. Fantastic. Yeah. So that's a very common scenario, right? Where, sometimes fear or greed, overconfidence, lacking confidence can be like the primary cause of mistakes. And then anger is the thing that sparks you after you've either missed opportunities, made mistakes, lost money, whatever, because of those other emotional issues. So sometimes self-criticism can be all part of that. I would target that kind of primary problem first, because the secondary part is not really that flawed, right? Like, that you're underperforming, that you're making mistakes. It's not the worst thing in the world to be upset about that. What's problematic is that then that anger then causes more problems. So there is some denial, avoidance, maybe not avoidance, but there's some denial. There's some expectation of yourself that's in there that's making your reaction worse. But the bottom line is, right, the primary problem is the thing you got to focus most on, even though sometimes anger can be the one that gets the most attention because it's bigger and more problematic. Okay, a lot of good questions. I see a couple more, but I'm going to get to the ones that came in advance, and then I'll come back and answer your questions. All right. This is a question that came in from Mike. There's a lot to learn about tilt and other stuff from those conversations on the Mental Game of Poker podcast. Sad they're no longer available. Why did you take the majority of them down? So for those that don't know, for years, I had a podcast called the Mental Game of Poker podcast. And it stopped maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I just kind of got tired of having a lot of the same conversations. But unfortunately, the platform that I was using, I think, went under. One day I tried to log into my account and the whole thing was just gone. So kind of unfortunate. It was, kind of out of my hands. So I have the recordings still, but there's not really, I guess I could probably post them to my YouTube channel now that I think about it. Good idea. Maybe I'll look into that. There is some good content from there for sure. As a heads-up poker player, I have a hard time quitting villains I know I shouldn't play, but that are just on the edge. For those that don't know poker, meaning like there's a line where the edge of that player is just so marginal that it's not really worth playing them. It must be some kind of an ego problem. I always find excuses to play them. I did several mental hand histories. My correction is always something around injecting logic. But then when those kind of guys join me, I don't inject the logic because they are just on the edge. And I always find an excuse to play them, John. So John, actually, email me your mental hand history. I'm kind of curious what you wrote there first and foremost, because my suspicion is that you're not getting to the heart of it, right? And so for those that aren't familiar, right, the mental hand history is my 5-step process for breaking down and identifying the root cause of the problem. Now, in this scenario, it doesn't have to be an ego problem, right? An ego problem in my world is a confidence problem. Right? Ego is kind of confidence. Ego, I think, ends up kind of getting, is a term that gets a bad rap, right? We go back to Freud. Freud defined a part of our character. It's not a character, a part of our psyche that is the ego. Having an ego is not a problem. It's, I think, another word for identity. Not having an identity. The bottom line is, right, the word ego gets a bad rap because it suggests that you're arrogant, overconfident, full of yourself, right? Versus, no, it's just you have an identity. Okay. Bottom line is, it doesn't have to be a confidence or identity problem. It certainly could be, right? You maybe want to prove that you're better than these players, and you're taking you're playing in a game that is not necessarily the most profitable, but you're kind of seeking or searching for a way of kind of proving that you're a better player than them, or you're trying to prove to yourself that you're a good player, a player who is capable of beating them. But of course, logically that whether you win or lose this one heads-up battle doesn't mean that you're better or worse because of variance. So kind of ironing out, like, what is that true driver? If it is confidence related, as I suggested, then that would be the flaw to work through. Now, the reason I say it doesn't have to just be a confidence problem, it could be a motivational one. You might be motivated more by being a great player than you are towards maximizing your hourly or your profitability. And so there might be just a bit of a conflict between those two motivators, and working that out and making very clear decisions about what you truly care about. And maybe there becomes a time and place. Maybe you have a separate bankroll that you carve out just for playing in these kinds of games. And when that bankroll goes away, you can't play with them. You can't play those games until you reload that piece of it. You can't reload it, just from your profits. You have to only take a certain percentage. So maybe it's like 10% of your monthly profits goes into that, for example. But bottom line is, whether it's a confidence problem, whether it's a motivational problem, you got to do a little bit better digging, because I think that's more what we're dealing with here. I recently came across your tilt framework, and despite having done mental game work before actively, it is only recently where I've begun to cultivate genuine awareness about the emotional elements of poker and its impact on decision making. As I'm still very much in the data gathering phase of this emotional work, I just wanted to ask you, what things besides the obvious taking notes can one do to hone the self-awareness further? Well, yeah, the taking notes in real time is always the best, because you're actively paying attention to those data points that would indicate that you're, tilting at various levels. I think the thing that everybody needs to get better at, the thing that most people need to get better at, is identifying the early warning signs. It's just so easy to only pay attention to the problem once it gets big, but not see, the fact that this one hand that you lost, where you were ahead on the turn, and it was just kind of a sick river card you had to fold. That you had to. It was logical, and at the moment it didn't feel that bad, but the having to give up just like stuck with you, and then a few hands later you make another mistake, and then you tilt because of that. You might not make the connection between those two hands. It's important that you do. So it's not just the note taking of what you see, it's note taking what you see, but then trying to go back earlier and earlier to see other warning signs that may have been, kind of contributing factors here. The other thing you should be doing is studying what you're finding so that you can improve it while you're playing. I mean, if we view self-awareness, and I prefer the word recognition, okay, and I'll say why. So awareness suggests that I can see this stuff. Recognition is, I see this stuff and it means X, right? You're connecting like these data points, like heat in your head, or tension in your chest, or your hands being clenched, your eyes moving very rapidly between tables, and kind of having this like extra focus. You're identifying all those data points to tell you that you recognize that you're at your anger, that you're angry, and you're angry for these reasons. So that recognition is a skill that gets developed and honed over time. The more you practice it, the more you're going to be able to see the more subtle data points that you can't now. Every single poker player, trader, golfer, esport, like everybody that I've worked with has been able to get better at this skill the more they pay attention to it, the more they study it, the more that they review it. So that's another one. And then the last thing is to do a mapping process that I described more in the mental game of trading, but it basically has you list out the degrees of severity of, let's say, a tilt problem, right? From level 1 to level 10, where level 1 is the most smallest amount, right? The basic early warning signs. Level 5 is now, kind of you teetering on making some bigger mistakes. and level 10 would be tilt at its worst. Put it in a scale, and that helps you to really kind of see the trajectory, the escalation of the tilt problem in real time too. All right, a couple more questions, and then I will get to those that are in the chat. We know that practicing makes a person better in any area. But recently, when I practice trading in the simulator, I make more mistakes in the coming days in live trading. Is there any benefit practicing in the simulator to be a better trader? Yes, but my guess is that you're making mistakes because you're trading pretend money and you're not really taking it that seriously. So yeah, you're just like, I don't know, playing a video game. It doesn't really, that you don't really care about. So if you're going to trade in the sim, you have to take it as seriously as it's the live market. That's the only way you're going to get good reps from a practice standpoint, right? This is like, the term is deliberate practice, right? You are putting a high concentration of focus on the activity that you're doing. And that's the only way to get really good practice from it. Can you please explain in which situations I can trust my gut? No, I can't do that easily. But yes, I have an ebook that you should download. So you guys can't see the URL easily, so I'll type it in the chat for you. It's on my website. It's under the resources tab. But the point is, right, that the point is that intuition is most likely to be accurate when you are in the zone, when you are close to your, when you're in your A game, you'll have a closeness to your intuition that you're likely to be able to trust. Now, I say, in which situations can I trust my gut? I'm not being definitive here, because if you are a beginning poker player or a beginning trader, meaning less than 1 year, then there's really no situations where you should trust your gut, because you're not knowledgeable enough to have like real, genuine intuition that would come out. And so we don't really know, whether the intuition you're having is motivated by a desire to prove that you can trust your gut, or whether it's being driven by actual competency and knowledge that is generating real intuition that you can rely on. So yeah, but to get the ebook, it certainly can help. All right, 2 more questions here. Does perfectionism drive a results-oriented mentality, or does results-oriented mentality drive perfectionism? Chicken or the egg thing here. I think it depends on timing, right? If you grow up in a primary results-driven environment, it certainly can it certainly can create a perfectionistic mentality. And does perfectionism drive a results-oriented mentality? Yes, but then what drives the perfectionism, right? So I guess the question I would ask is, well, if it matters for you, then cool. But does it really matter? Because at the end of the day, we need to understand the causality. So if being overly results oriented, I guess it does. So bottom line is, right, yes, the perfectionism can come from other reasons that are not results oriented, in which case you got to figure out what those are. And if you have a results driven mentality and you feel like perfectionism is a symptom of that, then you got to understand what is driving the results oriented mentality for you, which could be that you don't even, you've been raised under the umbrella of results are all that matter. And there's nothing inherently flawed about that perspective, except that in environments like poker and trading, that mentality is dangerous. Whereas in, other arenas, it's not as flawed, right? It may not be ideal for a lot of reasons, but here is sort of exposed as being a bigger problem because of how much less you have control of the short term. Can you talk about FOMO and how to avoid it, Jiri? So the fear of missing out is, I think, an umbrella term that can mean a lot of different things. It doesn't always mean that you're actually afraid that you're going to miss out on an opportunity. A lot of times it can be, if you miss out on an opportunity, you're going to be really angry. And it could be like hate losing or mistake tilt could be driving that desire to not miss out. It could be perfectionism, as Michael was just asking about. So you kind of have to drill down in and figure out what is driving that desire to not miss out on opportunities. If you can do that, then you can create injecting logic statements that you can use to kind of drive into that moment to correct your emotional reactions. That's kind of how to get it done. In order to not just avoid the FOMO, but actually like correct the impulses driving it. All right. So lots of good questions coming in advance. Always happy to see that. And now let's get to your stuff. So I think this is all right. From Victor, I have an interesting issue. I find myself doing very well consistently for a while, and all of a sudden my discipline disappears and I over leverage. It's usually triggered by a loss, but not always. Interesting, but pretty common. I mean, this is true both for poker players and traders. So all of a sudden, that suggests you're not aware of the early warning signs of what's going on. Now, the early warning signs could be overconfidence, could be a little bit of boredom, or just like kind of lack of drive, motivation, laziness. The overconfidence could be, thinking that anything you're going to do is just going to keep printing, right? Those little things are very often kind of here. Sometimes there's fear, fear of having not continue, but I don't get that kind of vibe from this way you frame the question. So that's one. Two, right? You can just kind of have a like an over optimism, right? That this is just going to kind of continue, but now kind of given the cycles that you're talking about, which has repeated at least twice, otherwise you wouldn't frame the question this way. There's evidence to suggest that you have, like, there's a difference between having a level of competency that's capable of performing well at certain times versus a level of competency that you've proven to realize through different mental and emotional cycles as well as market cycles. So what I would suggest here is that when you're doing well, you create like a marker in your mind that says, I want to like now start to track the proficiency of my execution, or find a way to measure your performance in some way, shape, or form. And then to be able to do that for like 1 to 2, maybe 3 times as long as the period that you're doing well. So if you're doing well for 1 month, I want to see at least 1, ideally 3 months where you're able to continue to do that without having a fall off and having your discipline disappear, or your risk management parameters disappearing. Right, that's going to give you an indication that you can then, have more hardiness and skill and kind of pushing through that. But should be very hard for you to. Now, at the end of those 3 months, what does that mean? Does it mean that you can now just kind of coast? No, it does mean you still have to stay vigilant, but maybe you've developed some skills to work your way out of it. Matthew, I'd just like to say the injecting logic statement from the outside looking in seems kind of stupid. No offense. But after doing the data collection and mental hand history, it's insane how effective saying this sentence out loud changes everything for me. Okay, I'm confused. I thought you were saying, okay, I thought you were saying that injecting logic was bad, but it sounds like you're doing great with it, which is cool. So, look, injecting logic, for those that aren't familiar, right? It's just a term for thinking. It's like it's a mantra, but the point of it is that when you've done the mental hand history, it means you've better understood the root cause of the problem. And that is what you are fixing. So most people, when they try to think their way through their anger or their fear or whatever, they're just kind of bouncing the ball back and forth, right? They're not doing anything that's materially different. Like, oh, I'm panicked, right? Playing up against this really great player. It's like, oh no, don't be afraid. Just, do the best you can. F him, whatever. And like you're trying to kind of overcome the fear, or, if from a tilt standpoint, right? Mistakes happen. It happens to everybody, or losses happen, just take each hand or each trade as they come. Like it's all stuff that sounds good, but you're not actually getting to the root cause. So injecting logic is so potent because it's actually like the weed killer, getting into the roots rather than just plucking the weed off from the top. So it's good to hear that you're getting some good results out of it. All right, Constantine, how do you forgive yourself for mistakes you did while on tilt? Okay, so the mistakes you made on tilt were emotionally driven. It means that you're still responsible for it, right? We're not saying that you get to just kind of wash your hands up. That happened while I was on tilt. Forgive and forget. Move on. No, it's to understand that those mistakes were inevitable. You had no choice in that moment other than to do that, right? The failures were not in that moment. The failures were in the moments preceding it, right? Failing to see the early warning signs, failing to have a good understanding of what was going on, failing to have corrections that you could have had a choice, failing to take action before that part of the brain, right, that could control or correct your emotion becomes hijacked and you're just emotional. That's where you failed, right? That's where you're now responsible for. But to be really pissed off at yourself that you did all this dumb, stupid stuff while you were on tilt, it's like emotions make you dumb. Not just you, everybody, myself included, right? So yeah, like holding on to that maybe suggests an illusion of emotional control that suggests that under any emotional state, you should always be able to do things properly. And the bottom line is, right, in those moments, you are kind of reverting back to your, like the core of your competency. And for a lot of people, that's pretty basic, but there are things that we don't do, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that we would not do when we're tilted, right? Which we're not going to take for granted, from a poker sense, from a trading sense. But it feels so basic that it's kind of pathetic. And that's fine. But the bottom line is like, yeah, you still retain some skills. What we're now trying to do is stack more and more capacity when you're tilted, right? And one of those can be being able to learn how to quit and stop trading. All right. Oh, Jonathan, you're here. Cool. Yeah. Send that mental industry along. Best way to do it would be go to the website, all the way down here. Just click this contact button and then just copy paste it. All right. Another question from FO. How do you ensure you are getting to the correct root understanding behind desperation tilt and address it properly? How can you ensure it? You have to prove it. So how can you ensure it before? I mean, because again, desperation tilt is so damaging. I think the way you ensure it in that scenario would be that you're not going to know it until you test it, but you got to create conditions that are going to allow you to not mess up too bad. So in trading, you've got like ironclad rules with your broker. As a poker player, I know some sites, will allow you to, kind of limit deposits and if you're playing live, form a good rapport with, the hosts that are there, the guys on the floor. Somebody, you just find a way to limit the downside while you go out and test. And the bottom line is, you just got to find something that feels like it could work, feels like you have a sense. And generally, when you're going through the mental industry, if you've not generated new insight, especially for a problem like this, you're not there yet. If you're just regurgitating things you've already heard and thought of before, it's not. Like, things have to kind of click in place and have a distinct sense that you understand something now that you did not understand before. Miles, sometimes I resist the urge to tilt, but end up locking up and not entering good setups. It's definitely better for my capital preservation, but it's still not the ideal situation. Yeah. So in there, you are managing or controlling your tilt. And that is not the long-term goal, right? The long-term goal is to correct the core flaws, right? Correct the causality. And then when you do that, right? And this is not an instantaneous thing, right? When you do that, and I say that like over time, right? It takes a lot of repetition, a lot of experience to find, that work that Matthew was talking about, right? The data collection, the mental and history, define the injecting logic statements, right? And then it's a lot of repetition in order to actually correct it. Once you have corrected that core flaw, okay? And let's say it's a hatred of losing. So again, on its own, right? You can hate losing, but the way in which you hate it then causes more mistakes. So there's a degree of denial around the practicality that losses are part of the game, the sense that you have more control over your short-term results than you actually do, right? Something like that. And so you find that you've got an injecting logic statement that you're just like continually getting in there. Eventually, your mentality, right, your understanding will be upgraded, right? That problem will have been resolved, right? Same terminology there. And at that point, you're not going to have to resist the urge to tilt because you're just not going to tilt, right? You may have the reflex, right? But that means you're not really generating a lot of emotion. It's now just kind of a habit, and it becomes a lot easier to contain. So yeah, you just got to do the work that is prescribed in the system that Matthew has described going through. That's going to get you on the other side of it. All right. See a number of the questions. Let's keep rolling here. So when it comes to solutions for tilt, clearly the solution is to stop it early. But do you have any suggestions to reduce the emotional intensity of tilt? Yeah, that's the injecting logic. So you catch it early, you inject logic, and then you use what I call a strategic reminder. The strategic reminder is just like kind of technical concepts, ideas, right, around how to avoid your most common mistakes, the ways in which you make a decision, the factors that you're considering factors that you consider to make a decision that disappear, right? It's basically just like we stabilize your emotions, but I want to make sure that you're going to make a better decision. So what technical things do you need to be reminded of in order to ensure that you're going to make a good decision? So the whole point there is we get your emotions stabilized, and then you make better decisions. And when you make better decisions, that's going to help to also reduce the intensity of tilt. So that process works versus just like a deep breathing versus going for a walk. Like I think the where you're going with this in this question is some of the kind of the prototypical like meditation, mindfulness type stuff. And to me, that's trying to just like temporarily reduce the tilt versus in the long term correct the causality of the tilt, which is going to ultimately prevent it from occurring again in the future. All right. Let's see. I think Sahil, you got some comments there. Lope, hello, welcome. All right, Kevin. I've been interested in getting involved in esports, sports psychology. Do you have any advice for how to get involved? I have a background in playing competitively and currently in school. Education. Look, I mean, you could very easily get a job in esports because there's such a big demand for it. Maybe a little bit less so because the economy and just sort of the nature of the investment world is kind of reduced capital inflows there. So the investments are definitely down compared to a few years ago. But I think education is the only way to get this done. And I'm definitely biased because I spent a lot of time getting educated, but I think that education formed the foundation for me not to be full of shit. It's bottom line. I've seen a lot of other people in this space, and many of them have bachelor's level education, which is a nice start, but like you've got to really develop your skills in being able to work with lots of different types of people, right? And there's been a number of clients and people that have come to me over the years saying, hey, well, love this stuff and love this, psychology, just as you're saying. And, my growth and development has been huge, and I want to help other people, which the intent is great, but there's a massive difference between being able to work on yourself and be able to understand yourself and being able to help lots of different people. And so, yeah, I think you have to kind of ask yourself, how good do you want to be? Because if you want to be great, then you've got to put a lot of time and effort in to form a foundation. If you were an athlete, you wouldn't just have a couple of years of experience and expect yourself to be in the NFL, the NBA, professional baseball. That's just not how it works, right? There has to be a large foundation of knowledge and that then can give you better experience, right? You can get lots of experience, but if your knowledge base at the outset is garbage, how good can you really get? So I think you got to ask yourself, like, what do you really want? What's driving you in this? Some of the people that I've worked with over the years, I'm not saying this from an arrogant standpoint. I'm just saying it because I know that what they're motivated by, right? And they're motivated by different things than me. And so, like, there's just certain things that's going to take them a very, very long time to be skilled enough to be able to help people as quickly as I am now. And that's probably the best way I can describe how my competency has gotten greater over the years, which is that I can more rapidly dissect and diagnose what's going on and then prescribe a strategy faster, right? Even for when I was first starting out, it could take me 4 to 6 sessions to really understand what somebody was going through. And now sometimes it happens in 5 to 10 minutes. I read their questionnaire and then that's it. So that there's no way to do that other than to have, this is now 18 years I've been coaching. But again, without that educational foundation, without that training that I got early on, there's no way that my skills would have advanced as rapidly as they did. All right, FO. In mental game trading, Gurdeep, part-time trader in the UK, had constant boom and bust cycles, severe desperation tilt, even while working with you for months. What was the root cause? How did he make it out since what was written? How did he make out since what was written? I don't recall the exact root cause being one thing. I recall it being many things, all of which, if it's not in the book, then I'm not saying it publicly because it's private. But the bottom line is, like, as I described in there, it was like a continual kind of work in progress. And we keep kind of thinking that we'd found like the final piece of the puzzle, only to discover, right, another, kind of boom. And then found something else, and it just kind of got deeper and deeper. In his case, there was some personal stuff that had to get worked out. How's he made out since? As it turns out, one of the problems that he was experiencing was definitely related to a mentor that was not as good of a trader as he thought and assumed. So he kind of had attached himself from a technical standpoint to somebody that was really quite bad. So part of the boom and bust was really related to the fact that he had kind of garbage skills in a sense. Can you elaborate on injecting logic? What types or kinds of mantras can I use to discover the root cause? It's the other way around, actually, right? You discover the root cause, and then the mantra or the logic is then designed to correct that. So again, injecting logic is just a fancy term for thinking, but it has to come from an understanding of the real causality. If you don't understand the root, then you don't really understand what you're correcting, because then that's what the injecting logic is designed for. And if you don't do it that way, then injecting logic just becomes another form of emotional control and suppression management that is great in the short term. But if you don't get over that hurdle to really correct the root, then you really don't go anywhere. In the end, we come up with hard solutions to abstract problems. Such are strategical part things, break-even sets, specific time of day to avoid run-out of trading. I'm guessing you're. Would you point injecting logic as a cold water bucket to turn off tilt? No, I would describe it more like the sharp edge of an axe used to chop down a tree. Early on, that edge might be quite blunt, and it ricochets off the tree, right? And that can be a consequence of even having the right logic, but not having studied it, right? As I said before, right? You've got to train this idea so it is strong and potent in your mind. If that's not the case, then that axe is not really going to do a whole lot. And so you're chopping down this problem. It's not a chainsaw. You can't just cut this tree down. It's something that's going to take time to really work on. So yeah, not an instantaneous thing, right? The cold water bucket, I don't think is the right way to describe it. Applying for your PhD, my man. Yes, do it right. Follow your interests. You're going to be exposed to so much different kinds of research and topics. Your mind is going to kind of go in ways that's going to help you to really create your own fingerprint. So just like poker players, just like traders, just like I have developed my system, it's all, kind of an externalization in some respects of, my character, right? Just as a trader or poker player, right, develops strategies that are a reflection of who they are and how they see the world, how they see themselves, how they see the game. So you're going to do the same thing, and so it's a combination of kind of follow your interests, but also make sure that you're still following the advice and the instruction you're getting from really good instructors, professors who know a hell of a lot more than you do, but they don't know everything. And they certainly don't know necessarily how you're going to take this content and apply it in a novel industry. So yeah, it's not like kind of either or. It's really both. I would like to discover these root causes of negative behaviors as they come into play in regards to tilt and poor decision making while trading. Yeah. So if you haven't gotten either book, or I guess trading. So yeah, get the mental game of trading. I talk about at least 40 of these, and as you're kind of reading through it, the whole point is, all right, there's first 3 chapters are kind of setup chapters. Chapters 4 through 8 are the kind of the meat and potatoes of the book, where we're talking about greed and fear, tilt, of course, confidence and discipline. And within those chapters are lots of stories and examples of, basically all kind of helping you to better understand what problem you are most likely dealing with, right? You might know for sure that tilt is the issue, but we've got to then kind of work our way down. You've kind of gotten into the right building, right? Being within tilt, but now you got to get to the right room. And the book kind of helps you to deduce and figure out what are the likely root causes that you're dealing with. All right. We were able to get through everybody. So great stuff today. Next office hours. Turn this off. Next office hours is. These things are all. Hold on a second. Well, now you can just read it. But yeah, next office hours, June 28th, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 20:30 UTC. And the topic is the purpose of routines. Might sound obvious what the purpose of routines are. But for many people, they fail to set really clear guidelines for what they're trying to accomplish with their routine. And thus their routines are not as effective as they could be. So we're going to be talking about that, as well as answering all of your questions in the next office hours. So I hope to see you there. And if you are enjoying it, first time here, I know it seemed like there was a couple people here for the first time. Please subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, free to join any single time. And yeah, today is our 2-year anniversary. I didn't say it at the outset because I kind of alluded to it at the beginning of the last one, kind of prematurely. But yeah, 2 years in, having fun. Glad to see everybody here today. I wish you all well, and I'll see you again next time.